Alright, so when you said you wanted to sample some slave music, bro.
Did I say that? I don't remember saying that.
Don't even pull up the VOD, bro. Just believe that you said that.
I don't remember saying that.
Okay, alright, let me pull up the video then.
Oh my gosh.
I think it was just Surfall has a crazy idea.
Maybe a wild question. If we get
I'm doing the exact same shit. That's crazy. That's so crazy. I'm doing the exact same
The
shit.
stream can't see this. My fault. My fault.
I look homeless, bro.
What energy you want today? After that, I threw it for like a couple minutes.
No, I look crazy. I'm wearing the same pants too.
You hear this one?
You gotta do it. I know crazy ideas though. Look, you should sample slave music.
Oh man.
Look at our faces, bro.
Should we do it on stream? Should we do it on stream?
While Party Rock Anthem's playing is crazy, bro. So yeah, what was that? What's the song called? Or do you want me to just type it in? Wait. Alright.
Oh yeah, that one.
The first one?
No, second one.
Second one? Alright. Who did? We vote for?
The losers, bro. We voted for the losers.
Wade in the water, wade in the water, children, wade in the water. God's a gonna trouble the water. See that band all dressed in white. God's a gonna trouble the water.
It's kind of tough.
The leader looks like the Israelite. God's a gonna trouble the water.
Wait a second. Hold on.
Wade in the water, children.
What did they mean by that? They mean like the black Israel.
God's a gonna trouble
Like the 5%.
Something like that.
Yeah.
See that band all dressed in red.
You think the people have sampled this already?
How can you find that out?
Looks like the band that Moses led.
Wade in the water. I don't know which one's which, but
Wade in the water, children.
I guess let's take a look.
In the water. God is gonna trouble. Yes, he will.
Nothing I know. Okay, that's Madlib, but that's okay. Madlib samples everything. Nothing I know. Tony Tone.
Oh shit, Tony Tone.
I think we're good. But there's a lot of versions of this song, bro.
There is.
Nah, I think we're good. We're good. And for what we're gonna do, I don't think it's gonna matter, bro.
You don't think
I don't think anybody else is gonna be making what we made, bro.
you don't think we're gonna get sued for all our earnings?
My God is good.
Alright. Here we are.
Oh, this is gonna be tough, bro. So I'm gonna be on screen by myself, and y'all gonna coach me through this?
I mean, I'll be on the screen, but you know, y'all. Yeah, me and the penguin.
Huh?
Me and the penguin.
You and the penguin? I'm not excited for this. How do I start?
How do you start?
Oh wait.
Yeah, so you wanna click on song instead of pattern, right next to the play button.
Where's? Oh, there it is.
Wade in the water.
We got Sir FL.
What the fuck did I do? How do I go back, bro? Okay, there
You go back?
Perfect.
Do you want to be able to click in the middle of it? Yeah, click on the magnet at the top left, or like kind of top left. You can change this. Right now you're on a bar, so you see every line is a bar.
Gotcha.
God's a gonna trouble the water. God's a gonna trouble the water. Rest in white in the water, in the water, in the water, in the water.
I don't know. How do I cut? How do I cut? How do I?
There's a thing here. It's like a razor.
What is it?
In the water, children wade. In the water, God's a gonna trouble the water.
What did I do? What did I just do?
What did you just do? You faded it in. If you want to move it, you gotta switch off the razor again. If you want to zoom in, scroll.
In the water, God's a the water. In the water,
It's lucky tough.
I didn't say it wasn't, bro. You're cooking, bro. You're cooking.
Okay,
something.
I don't know. How do I delete everything?
How do you delete everything?
Yeah.
What does that mean?
I just want to go back to like.
Alright, yeah, let me show you something that's gonna really help you out here, alright? There's a history. You can see what you did.
So I want to just go to very
Yeah,
beginning.
just go to add, replace audio clip. Yeah, there. Actually, scroll up a little bit. Go to like move clip. Yeah, there you go.
Perfect. Okay, let's stick to here. Okay, and I go to this cut thing to cut the shit, right?
Yeah,
And then right there.
yeah.
And then what can I do now? Oh fuck.
Well, now you're still on the cut tool.
So now
So
I
now
got
you
a
can click on the pencil.
pencil.
Yeah. Now you can move it and shit.
Oh, I got you. Okay.
So if you click on it,
If I click on what?
like the sound that you just cut,
Yeah.
you have to click on that, and if you click somewhere else again, like somewhere blank, you create another one. You know.
Ah,
So
shit.
you can like double it or loop it. Right now you have a 3-bar loop. I'm not gonna lie to you.
So what does that sound like?
Also, you have 3-bar loops stacked on top of each other.
I see.
All that does is make it louder, bro. Yeah, there you go.
Can I watch?
A tutorial video?
Yes.
I am your tutorial video, bro.
Okay. Bro, I just want to watch like. Let me.
What do you need to watch the video for?
No, I just want to see how like like a producer thinks. Just like you have a VOD of you like making a beat.
Bro, what do you mean you need to know how to make a beat? You need to know what to make. Bro, what sounds good to you, bro?
Let me hear the whole song again. What does this do? What is that faded?
That just means you're cross-fading them into each other.
Interesting.
Yeah. But you still got those playing.
Oh my
in the back.
God.
If you wanna delete something, just right-click it.
Let's try this.
Let me move this camera up a little bit. That's a producer angle.
This is terrible.
Yeah, I don't think you should be doing that, to be honest. To be completely honest with you.
What did I do?
What did you do?
I just faded it.
Yeah, you faded it all the way over there. Now start us fading in.
How can I just? Oh, I'm doing it now.
You're doing something, bro. Yo, just undo the history, bro, at this point.
Bro, it's fine. I don't hear shit.
Oh, my fault. Trust the process. Trust the process.
Alright, is this back to where we started? Why is it silent now?
Huh? What are you talking about? You went back too far, by the way. You went back too far.
You know, I went back
I
too
got
far.
you, bro. I got you, bro. Sorry, there was silence at the beginning of this.
Oh, got you. I think I need. You know what? Give me 1 second. What are you looking at? Oh, what are you looking
What
at?
are you looking at?
I'm trying to find the video. So
No. What are you showing? You don't know how to sample, bro?
I don't know how to sample.
Alright, bro. Just find a part that sounds good to you, bro.
I like the in part.
The
Ever?
end,
Wade in the water, children, wade in the water. Gods are gonna trouble the water.
Like what? Like you listen to music, bro. Like you know what parts do you be liking, bro?
Dressed in white. Gods are Gods are gonna trouble the water. The leader looks like the Israelite.
You want to sample this part? Just Israel A?
Gods are gonna trouble like the Israelite. Gods are gonna trouble the water.
If it makes it easier, you can turn the metronome on and see what it sounds like with like a metronome. You know?
Where's the metronome?
It was right there where your mouse was. Yeah, there you go. It might also help to find the tempo of the song that you're sampling.
So where do I find that?
You want to find the tempo of a song? Hello, are you here? Okay.
You got tennis?
So how to tempo? You know how to count like 1,
2,
2, 3, 4. Yeah,
yeah.
just do that, but like tap it.
I'm messing this shit up right now.
I should turn the metronome off. I believe you.
I don't believe in myself.
See that band?
Yo, I got you another helper, bro.
Yo,
I don't know what I'm doing, bro.
we here. How you doing, my boy?
I'm good, fam.
Yo, my fault for being late, bro. After ball, Ramesh was like, yo, can we grab he was like, yo, can we grab Alexis on the way home from ball? And I'm thinking like it's somewhere in Brampton, right?
Definitely not.
He took me to Oakville, bro.
Oh shit, Oakville?
He took me to Oakville,
Oh, damn.
which was half an hour from where we were, and then it was another half an hour to like my crib,
And then
I had to cut Moise's hair, and like, you know what I mean? So, lost time, bro, lost time. My fault, but I'm here now, bro. Better late than never, bro.
Oh, you see? Did you vote today?
I did.
Who'd you vote for?
Bro, we're on stream, we're not gonna say that.
Okay.
Wait, who did you vote for? I'll say if you say.
I voted Liberal.
I voted, liberal gang, bro. What's up?
They lost, bro.
I know, but it's okay, bro.
They lost after 10 minutes, fam.
Yeah, you missed the political part of the stream, bro.
Yeah, we
Bro, this is why I'm so hot, bro.
Yo, you know Doug Ford is the first premier to win 3 majorities in a row since 1959, fam.
Dog, what does that say about our current social and
He
political
dropped-
economic state of the world, bro?
Yeah.
What does that say about that, bro?
What does it say about the tempo, bro? Why are you laughing, bro?
Not laughing, bro.
It's Sir Fell, bro.
Why don't you just give him Serato?
You gonna make it easy for him, bro?
At least let him have fun, bro.
Fine.
What is that?
Basically, you drag a sample in, and it already like time stretches it to this and like everything. You click find samples, it'll find samples for you.
How the fuck did that? Okay, wait, what?
Yeah,
Fine, if you want to cheat, bro.
and lets you like. So it's like when you drag it in here,
Mm-hmm.
it's already in key with like whatever this is. So you click find samples. Yeah, now click one of these. Like let it play out.
Oh, this is a lot better.
Wait, turn up the volume.
Where's the volume?
Because the sample's kind of quiet. Yep. That's kind of hard.
What type of bullshit you have me doing,
Bro, I had you on the. I had you wax on, wax off, bro. I had you make you learn the fundamentals.
Bro, you had to do like the grunt work. I walk in, this guy's like, yo, this is so much more easier, bro.
Okay, these all sound the same.
You can also change the
Bro,
tempo
you
and
can
the
click
pitch
some of them
and
down
stuff
here,
like
bro.
Nah.
Children wade harder, wade in the water, in the water.
I think I like this one the most.
This one?
I sound like
Yo, that's hard. Let him
I sound like fourth dimension, bro.
Yeah. I'm gonna take a piss.
Alright, bro.
No way you had it. Like, I want to see
Waste
the
my
beginning.
time. I'm like, what am I doing, bro?
Yo, I came in here
Nah.
and I saw him like at the very first, and he's just like playing it back.
You're gonna laugh your ass off when you see what he was cooking.
I don't know what I'm doing, bro.
Yo.
Bro, chopped the sample, just fucking crossfading it into itself, bro. I'm like, yo, this is definitely content, bro.
Bro, like he sounds like fucking Kanye West all of a sudden, bro.
It does, though.
Alright. So,
Okay, you help him find a good loop. I'll go take a piss real quick.
Alright, bro. So yeah, you can change the pitch with key shift. If you want it to be like a higher pitch. Alright, chill. You didn't change the pitch of this sample, you changed the pitch of
Oh.
Yeah, now we're on some Boy Wonder. You having fun, bro? So yeah, you could just loop that if you wanted to.
Okay, where do I press?
Yeah, so click on that piano button, I think. Yeah, so now go to the piano. Let me take you to the piano, bro. So like these piano rolls, they'll like line up to, I don't know which one it is, but I'm trying to figure it out for you.
It's the first one.
Is it lining
C5.
up? Is it? Oh yeah, it is. Yeah, so now you can like play the note.
You know, I just lied, but I had no idea.
Oh, you were right, bro. I think it makes sense. It's the first one, but so like so that note right there,
I can copy it?
like click on pattern up here.
Where's... Oh, okay.
So now that note is the sample. So it's not gonna play the whole thing because you have it like a short note. So if you extend the note, like by clicking and dragging it, now like making another one next to it.
Okay. How do I go back? With this?
You know, undo button, Control Z.
Oh, okay. I was doing that before. That shit wasn't working. So, okay, hold it longer?
So like
Right.
on the edge, yeah, drag it. There you go. So now.
Okay.
Yeah.
stop.
So you see now it's too long for the.
Oh, you know what you could do? Click this. You know how it's like the no. Okay, stop it for a second. See that thing below?
Mhm.
Below that. Click that, and it just plays. It just plays all the way.
Oh, so it's over here.
Yeah. So if you want to chop it up, you could leave it playing.
No,
or
just
you could
connect it to the 3 because it's playing all the way to the 3. Yeah.
Oh, it's gonna be a long fucking stream, bro.
You really go like that. You could really have like 1 here, 2 here, like you know what I mean? Like that's how you
Okay.
really chop it up.
How do I stop this?
Press pause.
Yeah. Okay.
Do that then.
Fuck.
So you want that ooh, like to repeat at the beginning?
Yo, low key, yeah. Put it there, yeah. Put another one right after that.
He wants the woo shorter.
Yeah, okay. Put another one right next to it. Yeah, put it.
If you want him to stop where it stops on the note, you have to click that thing again. Attachment, touch, and press.
Yeah.
Oh, got you. Okay, I got the 4.
You know what you can do?
I'm for real now.
Move one of these up.
See, that's a lot better.
Yeah, see, like now you're really chopping it up.
Can I copy all of these?
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do I do that?
Click and drag. I'm gonna hold the control for you though.
And,
Now, you know how to press buttons. You gotta use the keyboard yourself, or you want me to press all the buttons for you?
Control P, yeah?
Control P,
Control C.
Control Z,
Oh,
Control
my
C,
fault.
Control V, bro.
Bruh.
Bro, just yeah, there you go. You wanna move that over? Just gets a little bit off.
Yeah, make sure it's on the line.
Okay.
You can also right click instead of clicking to delete. Instead of just pressing undo every time.
I click paste.
Oh,
Just pause it. Just click paste.
Why are you pressing P, bro?
Bro,
That's print. I know that's print. It's Control V, yeah?
bro,
Oh my god.
right click. Yeah, there you go.
There you go.
Yeah, there you go. Ah, there you
I know
go.
this was basic computer class too.
Relax, bruh.
Yeah, you could even like put that. If you put that straight, that's gonna cancel out. But put it maybe in between this way, and it could be a whole.
What would you say, like between?
Yeah, put it there. Try see how it sounds.
Okay, whatever.
Just click pause. Play.
Play the pattern.
Up here, yeah. Loki? That could.
Whatever you're feeling, bro.
I'm not feeling this.
You can also slow the whole thing down if you wanted to change the pitch or the tempo. I mean,
Just right click on that, right click on that.
like yeah.
Or you can go lower.
Lower, like.
Like, drag it down. Yeah, like just. See, bro, use this little.
Yeah, just fuck around here, bro. It's all you, bro. Whatever sounds.
I feel like I'm wasting our time, bro.
wasting. Nah, this
This is a
creative
good loop
this
you
is a
got going,
creative
really.
process, bro.
Yo, if you want, slow down this tempo. Now it's 143. Yeah.
Keep it playing. And then on the three, drag down. You're going by hundreds.
Okay, when it
Or
gets.
tenths, I mean.
Oh, motherfucker, here?
Yeah.
You can also right click if you wanted like to give you numbers.
That's way too slow. go to like 110. Put on the metronome. Let him like hear the bounce to it.
That's this one, yeah.
You got the vision, bro.
I don't. This beat, I don't know how you.
Like the loop is good. I don't know about that part.
It was good where it was before, bro.
I feel like if you add drums, you'll understand it, man.
Yeah. Okay. Just don't worry. Just put it back to where it was before. That was a good loop. Right? You want to push it all? There you go. Okay. Right. Let him just add drums now, and you gonna see the vision, bro.
I got you, bro. All right. So we're gonna close this. Yeah, we're gonna get rid of it.
This is stressing me out, bro.
This is
Why is it
out,
stressing you, bro?
There's nothing stressful about this, bro.
This sounds. I don't hear anything.
Bro, trust the process. All right. So
No, low key.
there's a bunch of folders here.
Why don't you just like drag the sample in there so he, bro? Cause you gonna get.
Like the sample or like just this?
Just like put the pattern down.
Alright, let me just like loop this like 8 times. Or 60 times.
Okay, I mean you could have just looped it, bro, and then
Alright, bro.
yeah,
My
just
fault.
keep it there, bro. You wanna just convert it like audio so it's like actually no, you might wanna fuck with it later.
We'll let him fuck with it. Alright, so there's a bunch of folders with a bunch of drums in them.
Gotcha.
If you want a specific sound, there's a search bar down here, and just type it in, you'll find something.
One sec.
Yeah. Other than that,
Pattern 2? Yeah.
I fuck with that, dude.
all right, just accept, bro.
Little Dirk. I think you should worry about the 808 last, bro. Just worry about percussive elements, yeah.
Yeah, kicks and snares and hi-hats, they're the main things.
That's a good kick.
You can play the sample if you want to like play the kick with the song.
Yep. Click the play bar up.
What are these
No, no,
buttons?
No, don't worry about that. Just drag it into that.
Wait, here.
That's a good one.
Okay. Put it here?
Yep, put it there.
Right there?
Not on that, not on that.
I mean, that's pattern 2. Why not?
No, I mean he's dragging it onto Serato sample.
Just
Don't
leave
do
it. Just drop it there. Drop it.
Yeah, you see you fucked it up.
I fucked it up?
How do you fuck it up? Okay, I click pattern 2. Okay. Let me just.
Alright.
Fuck.
Right click. See what I mean?
Oh, I don't know that. Just from.
I got you. The thing is, you dragged it on top of the Serato sample.
I got you. Like, I know what that means.
Like you just replaced it.
I still don't think he knows what that means, bro.
Let him cook, bro.
Keep it going. Click this next one. There you go.
If you want to do that, actually no. You got variation already.
Yeah, just finish it. Just click another one, I guess.
Keep it all the way down?
You don't have to, but like you can switch it up.
Nah, I'm not.
Just put that like, and then just do this one. Do
This one?
No, just the one right. Yeah, there you go. There you go.
Yeah. So a kick on every beat is like a EDM vibe, bro. If that's a
There you
vibe.
go.
If that's a vibe.
There you go. There you go. Maybe. Yeah. Keep going.
You can also add a snare if you're trying to fuck around. There's other folders, by the way. Little Dirky, I got you.
Yeah. Right there. Yeah. Perfect. Oh wait, this is looking one second. So right click on the snare, click cut itself. There you go.
That's not you. You didn't fix it, bro.
I mean, it's kind of tough what he's doing.
Bro, I don't hear it. This sounds like a mess.
Yeah, maybe. Okay, keep playing with the snare placement.
Okay.
You'll know when it sounds right.
I won't.
No, you'll feel it, bro.
Does that sound right, bro?
No, it doesn't.
Okay, so then.
Turn the metronome back on, please.
No. Did you explain to him what a bar is, bro? I don't think he knows that.
Give me a second.
Nah, he knows, bro. This is the bar king right here, bro.
Nah, but I got it.
Bro, like fucking NPC in a video game trying to give him the answer.
I did I say, bro?
Hey, listen. Hey.
Wait, just let it play again. Wait. Take that out.
This one?
Yeah, take that out. Take that one out. No, left it.
What'd you turn on?
The window.
There you go.
The file explorer.
If you want, you could also just speed it up a bit. Turn off the metronome. It's got a balance. You could go for a hi-hat, you could add more, you could, go for
Oh, that's right. Hi-hat, bro.
hi-hat, something. There you go. Hey.
It's like watching magic happen, bro.
Yeah.
Did you see that progression we just saw from Surfo?
Bro,
This guy placed the note, heard the note, and deleted the note by himself.
you know what's crazy? Bro, you know what I fucking love? It's like it's like before I came, and when I saw when he was like at the front of his thing, he was just like, it's like the audio fucking playing it back. If you want to go all the way, right click the hi-hat, click like fill each 2 steps. You could add more to this.
Okay, what are these shits gonna add?
Anything you want.
Anything your heart desires, bro. There's folders upon folders.
That's
You're still in the little dirt folder, by the way. There's other folders.
okay.
Yo, Circle,
What?
do you still not see the vision?
Let's get ready.
I'm gonna let you know.
That's what I'm saying, bro. You got the vision.
This is better than Hemisphere's beat.
Ooh.
As you know.
Loki.
I'm good.
Yeah, okay. You got great ideas, though. I will tell you that, bro.
Yeah, I don't think that works for this beat,
That
bro.
does not work. That does not work, bro.
This guy just gonna play. Okay.
Careful, bro. I think that's okay. My honest advice, I think that's just how you should abandon in general, bro.
Okay, fine.
Right click it. He's gonna delete, bro.
Yeah, I don't think these pre-made loops.
Okay, those are loops.
You need, bro.
Go to like,
Okay.
go to the brass, bro. Yeah, so you gotta go balance, good chop up. Oh, okay, yeah. Now it's time to add the 808. want the 808 generally to match your kicks.
Okay. Oh fuck. What did I do?
Right? Yeah. Okay. Now that they're in place, you wanna put them in the right key. Hey, yo, Minnie, you wanna help with that?
Is it this thing?
No. Go on the thing. Right click.
This?
Click piano roll. Okay. So.
Oh fuck.
No. Okay.
One second. C sharp.
So if you want to know what key to go for, when you were on what the fuck? Oh yeah. For this, for Sardo, when you clicked it, it said E minor, right?
Yeah.
So your 808 has to be in the key of E minor.
Got you.
Do you know where E is? Wait, where the fuck is? Where'd they go?
What are you talking about?
The 808s.
Oh, you're in a different pattern.
Oh, facts. My dumb ass, bro. My fault, right? So like, if you want to put it to E minor, you want to tell them how to shift it.
How do I?
So if you select all of them, and then you press Shift up or down, or Control up or down, Control goes a whole octave, and then Shift will go a note. Understand? And then up here, if you want to ever just see like what you're doing, you're on C5. So if you go up, it'll
It's not telling me where I'm going. On.
Okay.
Yeah,
Shift.
like-
Shift.
yeah,
Shift.
like-
Shift. 1,
Alright, no,
2.
I lied to you. I lied to you.
It's not shift.
No,
It is shift. No, just
it
do
is
shift.
shift. I just lied about this part.
Oh.
Okay, go up.
I thought it would, but it did.
That's D. I'm gonna go to E. That's
Upside down. Am I wrong? If this is D.
D.
Okay, wait. This is C.
Yeah.
So this is D.
Yeah. So you want to go to E. Cause there you go.
Okay.
Play now.
You understand it now?
It's getting better.
It's getting better.
You got a bouncer, fella. If you want, so like in the key, like you don't have to follow this, right?
Got you.
In the key of like E minor, right? You can even move some of these notes, like if you want variation. But often simplicity is key. That's wrong note. It's easier to know once you know the scale. You don't have to know, but I think the
Here, 1 second. I got you. C mate. What was it?
E minor.
Okay, so now the black ones are not in the key and the white ones are.
Yeah. So you put those.
So okay, the black ones are not. So like this one is.
Like, no, I mean like on the pattern, like the background. will be
You see
dark.
how there's like.
Oh,
these,
I see.
Yeah.
I
So
see.
all the white ones are in key.
So I had it. Oh no, it's not. So that's not white.
No, that is before you
Those-
had
those
it.
two are
You
in
had one below before it.
Oh, this
now-
one was one below.
Yeah, so it wasn't in key, but now it's in key.
So like if I move all the way up here.
Try it.
Oh, did I double that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
just there you go.
Also, let me do one there real quick.
Can I move one?
Yeah.
I like this. Okay, I'm done with this.
Okay.
Press X.
X.
Alright.
It's kind of tough, bro.
Bro, that's a good beat, bro. You want to add more percussively? You can get like an open hi hat. Like you.
Yeah, some sound effects. You could add like a bell or a cymbal.
Yeah.
Fucking money torque open hat, whatever the fuck that means, bro.
Like this one could be like a great to put on the one. You know, so it sounds like it's like a crash.
That's what sound effects tab if you want to open.
It's kind of tough too.
Cook it in there, bro.
Yeah.
Put it at the end? Like what you said?
I mean, that was a different one, but like you could put it like right here.
Here?
Yeah, put it right there, and when it plays around, you'll hear it.
Nah, I'm not liking that at all.
You put it on the.
But you can put it on the snare. You can put it on the snare.
Oh,
Either on the snare or on
here?
the.
Yeah, try that.
Yeah. You have to put it on a 1, like on the first of the colors.
Oh, the first one?
Like that's how it would work with the way you're envisioning it, I think.
So, where would that be?
Any of the first colors, like every time
So
it
blue or
restarts
red?
the color, every
Okay.
time it restarts the color, just put on the 1 and you'll see like the difference.
There you go. Put it here too. You can go like this. You can like do a couple variations.
And if you wanted to, you can also change the pitch of the hi-hat too. If you wanted to be like deeper, higher, faster, lower.
If you like the beat before you added this, you could just take this out completely.
Okay, wait, how did I... You said change what?
What do you want to change?
I'll make it like...
Click on it. Just like click on the thing. Not right click on it, just click on it. Alright, so here's pitch.
Yeah. But that's pitching it down. You can pitch it up.
Every 100 cents is 1 note. And 1200 is a whole octave. If you want to change like the in and out, like if it fades in, fades out, you can do it there. You can do a lot of stuff. You can reverse it if you fucking wanted to.
How the fuck do I do that?
Reverse? There's a reverse
Wait,
button right there.
let me try that.
Not bad.
Where's the reverse button? My fault.
It's just
Oh, is it?
switch.
No.
You want to make it quieter? The volume's like right here.
If you wanted to
Oh,
fade out,
perfect.
if you wanted to fade out, you can like drag this.
Yeah, you can just delete it if you don't like it, bro. Bro, you turn the volume up or turn that shit down.
If you right click, you can reset it to normal.
Wait, you said fade out?
Like you know.
Ooh. Sorry, bro. This be tough, bro. I don't know. I don't even know what that does. I don't
It
know.
changes the pitch and stretches it at the same time. We can only go 200 cents with it because it keeps the pitch like relatively or like the time. Amen in the chat. Bro, this is so good. Like this came everywhere. Bro found it.
He has no idea what song it's bro.
They have no idea the struggle it was to get here, both literally and figuratively and metaphorically.
Yo, Surf, if you want, you can even increase the tempo. See how you feel, bro. Look at the tempo, bro. Not that, bro. Not those ones,
By
bro.
1,000th, bro.
Click no, click no. Click no, click no.
No?
Yeah, click no.
Hey. Oh.
Click no.
Yo, Alan type.
I was like, yo.
So they're only gonna feed you.
Go to like 160.
If you right click on it, you can get like the even time again. Like just and then click on 160 at the bottom.
There you go.
Click no.
Maybe go to like 155. Ooh. I like this, I like this.
A little fast there. Oh, fuck. I pressed yes. Should I have not done that?
I
No,
don't.
you shouldn't have done that.
Okay.
Click no.
Now go to 150.
It's a 150.
I mean 155. Just click no.
Okay.
Yo, if you want, you could add some extra ones here. You know, spice up the hi
You know what
hats.
this sounds like, bro?
What?
Sounds like a jit beat.
Oh, low key.
This is a jit beat.
Oh, yo, he's looking cooking, bro.
Is it locked in?
Yo, Loki, he's cooking.
They're doing hi-hat rolls now, bro? Oh my god.
Obama would be so proud.
Yeah, so have you ever heard Emmett's first beat, bro?
No.
You wanna hear it real quick?
No. Show him after. Show him after.
I just wanna hear the night and day difference, bro.
Surfo, you got a good bounce, bro. I want you to know, most of the top 10 Billboard beats
Yeah.
are as simple as this.
Are you serious?
I'm not even joking.
Off these is probably just as simple, bro. ass.
Yo, okay, let me just turn up the kick a bit more.
You can just change up around the pattern if you want with the kick and shit.
Yo, you know what? Oh, also, if you want, okay, real quick. If you want, now you got like, cause if you mute this real quick. Whoa. These are the drums that you made,
Okay, wow, that's actually really cool.
right? So what I'm saying is, what you can do. This is what I do sometimes when I sample, right? Sometimes I'll just get a chop going. I'll cook up some drums. I'm like, yo, I like these drums. What you can do, you can go back to the pattern, and you can even try trying some different shit. See what works with the drums.
Okay, let's see.
You know what I mean?
Okay, let's go.
So you can go here. Here, my fault. Here, and you could just
Move that around, nigga.
like move that shit while it's playing. Like do some, like do whatever you want.
If you wanted to, also you could like just make a variation of this too, and just like make 2 versions of the same thing.
Yeah.
Like you could just copy this and paste another time. Let's make time one.
Oh, fuck. Okay, yeah. Let me make another variation.
Okay. Just save it from doing like no.
What do you want me to do? Like save it?
Save it, and I'll make like a whole new one, because I don't want to fuck this up.
Alright, man. Let me actually just consolidate this instead.
Yo, Lil Baby got arrested?
Again?
Allegedly.
Allegedly.
You been in that thing since 2001?
You been trapping since 2007, bro? Or 2009,
Damn,
bro?
Okay.
What's the line, Surfo?
What song?
The Lil Durk song where he comes out the safe, bro? He's like, I've been trapping since 2009 or
I
something.
I think 2007.
I was like, yo, you might want to just like make sure you read all that.
Yeah.
And when he plays, he doesn't make sure you read all
Wade in the water, children, wade.
So, I'm assuming you want to do
God's gonna trouble the water.
Alright.
Alright, Surfo.
We back at it, back in it.
Let's play button.
Oh! No. Take that out.
Let that one play. Okay, what the fuck, yeah.
That's hard.
Surfo thinks he's P&D or some shit, bro.
Well, if you want, maybe, like, do you know how you have those two?
Oh, okay. What are you saying?
Maybe try to repeat those two. And then let it ring out.
Why'd that happen?
Like, click that, tap that, and
Damn, that's so tough, actually.
ooh. You can even change it up after that, bro. I just wanted you to repeat it for the first two.
I like 5. That's my favorite variation. Actually, no, 4. What was 4? No, that's fine. That's not gonna change it.
That's not gonna change anything.
Unless you put another one after.
Ooh. You got variations going?
Water.
You can maybe add something over here. Yeah, try that. That wasn't too bad. Maybe you can even try like up here, bro.
This one doesn't need to start there exactly.
Yeah. That's off you. That's off you.
Let me do something real quick, bro.
There you go. That's actually pretty hard. You can just even leave it as that, bro. Ooh. You could even just leave it as that if you like it, bro.
I want to add the trouble part, bro. I feel like that could be hard.
No, wait, but no, do your thing, bro.
Does it see?
Maybe go down. Ooh, that was kind of tough.
Dragging it won't change anything, yeah?
No, just placement, really. Like, I wanted for you to just be like, yo, like, you just gotta place it. Oh, it loops after the 3. Ooh. That's tough, bro.
It's not gonna play because it's already
That's a good loop, bro.
You still trying to figure out the trouble though?
I don't think trouble's working.
The thing about the trouble is that they don't say trouble on the 1. So you have to offset where it starts so that it hits on the.
But he's not quite there yet, to be honest. Bro, that's a good loop. Yo, I was dropping bars in the chat, bro.
Yeah,
Bad guys, laid back guys. Yo, Alan, this beat is for you, bro. Just never tell people where the sample is from if you.
Thinking this isn't even the most egregious thing Alan's been a sample of, bro.
Facts, bro.
Yo, chill him up.
Okay, that's good. Yo, help him structure this part out with the other part.
What you mean?
Like, you got a variation going, right?
So you got this part right here, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you also have this one up here.
No, hold on. Put the drums on after. Like, copy this.
Yeah. One second.
There you go. So now, your entire variation just would sound like this. Which is good, because one could be a hook section, one could be a...
Sounds so different.
That note at the end is playing over into it.
Low key?
That's why,
You want that note to play? Just...
I don't want it to continue. Like, this part, that's weird.
You don't want to continue?
Yeah.
Honestly, Arjun, like, this needs a heart, bro.
He's a hard.
Arjun, bro, I know what you're talking about, bro. He knows too, bro.
What I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna just put a note here that's like mute so that it doesn't whatever.
Need a heart, bro?
Arjun, bro, what do you think of this beat so far?
Did it work?
Oh, could you put it afterwards, bro?
I think you...
Did I?
Oh, no, yeah, it looks like it's afterwards. Just... No, it's in beats. It's weird.
Oh, I think it's because. Let me just put it on an actual line. Does that work? Why the fuck does that not work?
Just consolidate just that part then.
All right, I got you.
Consolidate.
I got you.
You know what I mean? So then,
I
like,
got you. Oh,
you absolutely got me, bro.
I got you.
It does not look like you got me, bro.
I got you.
What the fuck are you doing, bro?
I got you, bro. I got you, bro. I promise I got you, bro. I got you, bro. I told you I got you.
Okay,
bro.
now it won't happen.
Yeah. Now it won't happen again, bro. I'm sorry.
This is a good beat, bro. Okay, yo, Vocal Chop sounds fire, still has potential. And Alan said, bad guys, laid back guys, she on my D. Then I'm that guy, so far I'll make your girl cry. And Arjun said, if this getting a Jeff level 808s, then this is certified slap.
808s and hi-hats, bro.
You know what's crazy? while he's listening to this, he may not like see what we hear, but like play this for him in a week, or like in like a year from now where he doesn't know where this beat's from. And he'll be like, wait a minute, I made this, and he's gonna fuck with it. And then he's gonna be like, yo, let me call it back in the studio, bro. I'm saying it right now on stream. That's exactly what's gonna happen.
That'd be the reason he never opts out of this dude, bro.
Facts, bro.
Oh shit.
Yo, low key, if he pitches that right, it could be.
You know what? You remember the key, right? E minor.
Okay, open this up. Click here.
This one?
Yeah, click that. Take that and drag that right below him. Yeah, okay. Now, no. Right click. Piano roll. Okay. E minor was a key. Is that E?
That's E, isn't it?
That's E. That's
Oh, fuck. So, do I just drag it?
No, just put it there. Just put it there.
My fault. The note's still at 0.
Wait, he's also not at. Okay.
You're not at the beginning.
Okay. One second. Just take this. Drag all the way back and erase it. Okay, yeah. There you go. Also, put down the thing for him. The pattern.
The what?
Pattern. He's not hearing it because like the pattern's not down.
Oh, you're right.
Oh.
You're right. Let's go to pattern 4.
Okay.
Let me just delete this extra pattern. Okay, pattern 4. Yeah. Piano roll. Yeah. Alright, you're good.
Go to E. Yeah, you're fine.
So yeah, click and drag. Or like drag from the edge, I mean. Click up from the edge, I mean. From the edge. Yeah. From the yeah, you're so close.
It'll just play. Don't worry about the length. Just drop it where you want it to drop.
Okay.
Click on song.
Definitely not.
So play. Click on song.
Oh, I should probably put it in there more. Huh?
Okay.
I'll go back. Oh fuck.
Oh, just go. You can just make a new one, bro. At this point, bro, please, just.
No, just click, bro. Just click.
I'm clicking it.
What the fuck? One sec. There you go. There you go. Now, fuck with the note, man.
No. Oh fuck this.
Remember, you can anywhere in the white notes works. That's too low, bro. He's not gonna hear it. Go back to yeah. Okay.
Gonna make it the key in 808, bro. Bro thinks he's Tupac.
Maybe drag the thing and pitch it down.
Bro knows he's Tupac. Hey.
It doesn't have to be an E, bro. Just anywhere in the whites. Remember. Pause. Yeah. Is the thing pitched in like do you open up audio editor and see if like the pitch of it is there?
I'll do that for him, Bill. That's a great.
We could be just setting him up for failure with that, bro. He's gonna try to make a 50-cent beat, bro.
8-3.
Yeah, that makes a lot more sense. That's the one. That's the key. Put it there. There you go.
What's on it right now? The sample's tough, bro.
That was the.
I don't like this.
Hey, you know what?
I don't like the piano. You good?
Yeah, bro.
A chair, bro?
Played ball today.
A chair, bro?
Yeah, it sure would be nice. What the fuck is that, bro? Fuck. Circle. To be
Yeah.
honest,
We good?
beats more or less done, bro.
Alright.
At this point, you're adding whatever whatever you feel like adding. Oh, that. Go back. Okay, open up. Go to pattern 2. You see where it says pattern 4 all the way up at the top? No. A bit higher. Now stop. Go to your right. Right. Stop. Pattern 4. Go down to pattern 2. Yeah. Okay. Now stop. Go back to where it was. Pattern 2. To the right. No. Right. One more right. Click that. Okay. Now you got this shit back up.
Okay.
Right. Put that. Grab crash delay. Put it in. And maybe you try putting out the 1. Just 1. If you don't fuck with it, you don't have to keep it. I'm just like, suggesting ideas. You can find a different crash. If you don't like this one, you can delete it all together.
Yeah, you can find something extra, bro. You got
Another Tupac keys, bro.
Tupac keys back, bro. You can do whatever you want, bro.
There you go. It's okay.
Open up some more folders. Maybe you'll find something new, bro.
Never know.
It's a folder within a folder, bro. Hold on. You gotta
Click it.
then go
Yeah.
down the folder.
Okay, that's enough.
FX, bro. FX, bro.
You go to FX. Above hi-hats.
Bro, this is Def AD. It is a beat, bro.
Bro, this is Tupac around. Who you killing on mid-beat, bro? Who the fuck is this guy killing, bro? Fucking gunshots in this. No!
Alright, chill.
Yeah!
He's dead, bro. He's dead, bro. Chill.
Oh, fuck, bro. Yeah, add that. Add that and you can put it in a different spot. See how if it adds to the bounce. Here. Oh, that's a good spot.
I think I'm done.
Just
Oh, fuck with that. Cloned it?
delete it. Okay, yeah. Nah, okay. Munir,
You done, bro?
Yeah, I think I'm done.
this is a good beat, bro.
Alright, bro. Title the beat.
Title the beat, bro.
What's today's date?
February 27th.
For like
I know.
for like 27 more minutes, bro.
Repeat. Doug Ford. 1959.
Yeah, that's a
PC majority beat. That's a crazy name, bro.
PC majority, bro.
Saved it?
Yeah.
Munir,
Try yourself, bro.
Yes.
It's tough, bro.
I promise you,
It's gonna sound better later.
Cause I promise you, within like a year, we're gonna play it randomly and be like, yo, who do you think made this beat? He's like, yo, is this my beat? And then he's gonna bob his head. He's like, yo, this is kind of tough.
Let's tell me you pack it up, bro.
That's crazy, bro.
Bro, but Alan's a hater, bro. Alan, why don't you get in here, bro?
Alan,
Let's tell
bro.
me pack it up, bro.
Let me play you Amit's beat, bro.
This is Am's beat.
It's not bad.
If you think this is not bad,
Wait. Just wait.
Surfo, pack it up, buddy. I'm playing with your thing, bro. Bro didn't even read it all. He did his thing.
Maybe it's not. wouldn't say not bad. I would say not
Yo, okay,
It's
now,
not good.
now that he's a certified beat maker,
not
right?
good.
Right? How about we just play him random beats and then see what he thinks of them?
Oh,
Alright.
beat making is tough.
Let me
man.
start with the classic, bro.
Yo, sorry, I'm not even joking. You did a great job today, bro.
You heard that beat, bro? You
Yeah.
heard that beat, yeah, maybe, right?
Yeah. Listen, a lot better.
I sampled his beat and then and you know all I did? I just added all those drums, bro. That's it, bro.
Without Amit's part?
Okay.
Yeah.
That's Evan's part.
It's like the SpongeBob meme, bro. Fucking Squidward tan.
Alright, play him a different one. Play him a different one.
Alright, let me play you, where is, EDM 3, bro?
I don't eat sandwiches for my haters, bro.
Bro, you upgraded to my producer. I'll pay you sandwiches. Yo, Alan, how do you not know the one thing Surflight hates is sandwiches, bro?
Alright, let me know what you think.
You're Alan's producer.
This is good. This is fun stuff.
Would you help on this, bro?
I don't know if I could.
Osmos? Yo, Alan, you're a chicken.
I hope the Thor always gets banned, bro.
Thor always gets
I hope
banned.
Thor always gets banned, bro.
That's a crazy thing to say.
I think I played you this beat, actually. I clicked on Hallelujah.
Oh, I don't think we heard this.
I think you've heard this. You heard this?
Have you heard this beat?
I feel like you've heard this beat.
I have heard this beat. I have heard
It
this.
says like, go to Laziz then, bro. You wanna play Money Trees, bro?
Yeah, you can play this one. What do you think of this beat?
I already love this stuff. This is a fucking amazing.
I added some more hi-hats, bro.
Thank you, bro. You like this beat?
This is amazing.
I was like a Larry June type beat that I made, bro.
This is actually gonna make me cry, bro.
It's gonna be good. Bro, shed a thug tear.
Yo, play up some of the other ones from that night, bro.
This is my favorite one of the bunch, bro.
Dipset ass beat, bro.
Dipset?
Has beat.
Oh, man, I love this.
Something like that. Something like this, maybe.
Oh my god. Oh my god. What did y'all cook up, bro? This looks crazy.
It's like pride flag, fire, fire, for real.
This guy's like rooting the MIDI and shit. He's like trying to break it down. He's like, yo, what they do, bro?
Mario.
Some Mario sound effect you want to throw in.
Right here, bro.
One sec. What is this? Just how did I just make only this one?
Right click on the dot.
One sec. Yeah, see that? Yo, I keep mentoring Surfo. He got it. Bro's inspired, bro. I think he feels bad for telling you to pack it up.
Nah, fuck you. Yo. Alec, go fuck yourself, bro. It's over. It's over, bro. I quit.
What do you think about this one?
Yeah. At the beginning, I was kind of lost, but I feel it now.
West Coast ass beat, bro.
It's an Osmos again,
Nah,
bro.
I'm gonna throw that shit in his face, bro. Next time I see him, bro.
Alan, bro, this guy's.
Take in. This is the creative process. These are his other drums that he just abandoned.
Look at this.
Tennis, bro.
Yeah.
I think he just abandoned them.
Like he just made a whole different set of drums, bro.
this more?
Nah.
Feel the difference, bro? Low-key, with both drums, it sounds crazy. In like a good way.
I don't like this one.
Playing the. Is this the other one? Yeah. Okay. What do you think about this one? What do you think about this one?
Take you to make this.
This did not take that long.
We made the 3 that you just heard and this one.
But okay, how many hours would you say?
I say
I said like maybe like an hour each.
I say 45 minutes in, we have the beat down. We're just fucking around for like the other 15.
Yeah.
You want to know context on this? This is a beat I made in 2018, and I hated the drums, but Felicia always loved the sample.
Yeah.
So I'm like, yo,
use the sample again?
this is the original beat, bro. Good, bro. It's like
it's kind of crazy.
it was a club sample, bro. It's a club thing, bro.
I think this was one we made then too.
Did we make this that day too?
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is a jazz beat.
This is not too far from what you made, bro.
Really?
Not too far. It just didn't take me as long, but like, no. This is I'm popping Molly like I'm Divvy, feeling litty, sucking titties.
Bar stuff.
That is a bar.
Why is he over there and not here then?
I like
Alan said he likes his beat. No, say that sound. Is there anything we haven't played him?
I don't think so.
Last time I was here, y'all ran me through hella shit, bro.
Facts,
Yeah.
bro.
I guess those were mostly songs and beats. Actually, no, you showed me hella beats too, stuff.
I think we showed him everything, bro.
Play Dinka Chicka. That one's for Alan. That's a beat I made for Alan. Alan, this beat is for you.
You like this beat?
Hey, why don't you make some bars for that song, yo?
He's
Yeah.
quiet. He's quiet on that one. bro.
Quiet all of a sudden,
Why
bro.
all of a sudden, bro? Fight on set, bro.
I have to answer this, my fault.
Hey, do your thing, bro. Do your thing.
Yeah.
Are you food?
I don't know what you're trying to get.
Trying
Y'all
to get
there?
food, you want to order food?
Oh shit.
Yeah, you can have it. Okay, bro.
It's just a fire for bro. This doesn't even need a verse. Nah. We need a U verse, bro. That's what we need, bro. Fada.
Fat. Bro, just get off. Fuck you, bro. Alan, bro, I heard you're on the Epstein list, bro. It's so over.
You heard it, bro? I saw it.
Oh, you saw it?
Yeah.
Yo, Surfer, what do you think about the Epstein list, bro?
Alan's on the Epstein list?
Yeah.
Bro. Okay.
Is this Michael?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. Okay, I have a thing. Right? Okay, so I was with Ramesh today, right?
Yeah.
And he was telling me, and I wanted to bring this up on stream with y'all, right?
Yeah.
And I have his permission to bring it up, right? He was like, yo, I don't know. I know this ain't what I think it is when you.
What do you think it is, bro?
I think it's a diss track I had on him, bro.
Nah, we're not listening to that again.
No.
Okay,
We need a second verse, bro.
Okay, but Surfo, for the diss track on you, we have a second verse open. Would you like to hop on?
No, I did not.
No, but at least hear the beat, bro.
I'm not hopping on.
No. Yeah, you can diss me back on the scene.
I'm good.
We can have like a 20-minute long diss track. We're just
Alright,
going
I'm
back
about
and
20 minutes, bro.
Hey, what the hell, man?
I think we could
You don't
edit this
know
song.
about death sentence, huh?
Oh, facts, bro.
Bro, you
I don't know
you wrote
about-
64 bars already, bro, and it was a throwaway.
Okay, yo. So it's,
the sentence are
Not for fucking Sabo just opened his mouth. Or Tan just opened his mouth. Sabo and Tribo doing the race.
oh man.
Bro, just get Osmos.
Nah, that shit was just funny, Phil. Where's my school?
And FLP is still hilarious to me, bro.
Actually, insane.
What's Fagthorn? Fagthumb. Go up, go up. No, right below EDM. There you go.
You want me
Fagthumb.
to play it with vocals?
Do not play it with vocals. No.
Light up.
Yeah. We gotta turn this off. Mute the vocals, bro. Unreleased, bro. No, fuck you. Give me this shit, bro. Fuck you. Oh, fuck this, bro.
I was fucking.
I was fucking, bro. Oh,
Factor is fire, bro.
it's Hallelujah, bro.
That's the EDM beat. Not the EDM beat, but like the EDM beat, you know?
You hear this one again?
This one, he's gonna start crying, bro.
This is theme song to your life, bro.
Theme song to your life, bro. You hop on this?
I wouldn't know what to say.
Just talk your shit, bro. Or don't talk your shit. Talk about some shit.
Alice's horny anthem.
This is a...
We can make this a horny anthem, bro, if you want. I'm horny. I'm horny. I'm horny. I'm horny. I'm horny. I'm fucking this bitch is so horny. Yeah. Telling them, horny as an antonym. Yeah.
Horny as an antelope?
Yo,
Yeah, oh, horny as a... Yeah, that's a bar, bro.
that's a bar. Horny as an antelope, bro.
Horny as an antelope.
Horny as an antelope.
Yeah.
How horny do antelopes get?
They have horns, bro. That's the bar.
That's the bar.
Fact. I was gonna search up like what's the sex drive of an
Alright, bro. Don't
antelope.
put that in my search history, bro. What the fuck?
No, I mean like, yo, it could have more layers than one, but why stop at one?
It's okay. One layer is fine, bro.
No.
No. You have to unlayer everything. fam. That's how horny
you
it
saw the
is.
Shrek teaser, bro?
Yo, mid,
Speaking
bro.
of layers,
No, I haven't seen the Shrek TV.
You haven't seen it?
I'm letting them cook, bro. They got Zendaya in that bitch, bro.
You're lying.
I'm
Who
out.
does she play?
She running top like Ash.
She plays
Flame on, I'll leave you
one of the
fast.
children of Fiona.
Let me hear how that works.
Grown up.
We got a Ghost Rider in our chats, bro.
Oh wait, I did see Shrek 4. I didn't know they dropped the next thing.
Shrek 5 teaser.
Shrek 5.
She running me top like Ash. Flame on, I leave you fast. Man, I just love my cash. Sure.
Okay. Why do you spell cash like that? You talking about...
Ash Cash? Ash Cash? Oh, yo, this guy evolved, bro. Running me top like Ash. Man, I just love my cash. Yo, this guy's turn it off, bro.
Yo, this is actually
Okay,
like-
Alan, bro, I see you, dog. Oh, okay.
Bro. Yo, I think you know what what happened, bro?
What happened, bro?
I think Surfball is leveling up, bro, but he got the EXP share on Alan's leveling up too, bro.
Yo, yo, fuck. Yo, what happened to the fucking Pokemon thing, bro?
The Pokemon that.
That's a. I saw the big picture. I'm like dying. You guys are fucked.
In the wild,
I was like, is the food here, bro? I'm waiting.
gonna trouble.
Yo, this is the original sample.
See that
Alright.
Wait, hold on. Why do you spell that? Why do you spell that like
Yo, why
that?
is it that like that?
Like, well, that's
I
kind
didn't
of.
even peep that. That's crazy.
Nah, she said it like that.
That. See that?
see that band.
She said that, bro.
Nah, I heard that. Anyways.
That's not bad. I don't like this version. You should just stuck to one.
Separately, they're both fire though.
Yeah.
Oh, whoops.
It's a fire. Yo, drop a freestyle.
Yo, let's go up.
Yeah. Yo, where's Alan's bars, bro?
Yo, fine, get Lizzie's. Yo, where's Alan? Where are your bars, bro?
That's an estimated arrival.
Yo,
105, bro.
Oh, showed my cat. Yeah.
Oh, we're fucked, bro.
Yeah, we're cooked.
It's okay, bro.
Wait, what time you say?
It's an estimated arrival 105.
Don't you have Uber One?
That's Uber One, bro.
That's crazy.
Damn.
Probably be earlier, bro. Probably know. Yo, I was. Nah, I lost it, bro. I lost it.